It's strange how summer sounds can sting. The laughter, the clatter of plates, the smell of grilled corn and smoke, they used to mean home. But that day, they just reminded me how far I'd gone and how different I'd become. Everyone at the Reynolds family reunion was talking about work, cars, football, the same rhythm of small-town life that never changed. And then there was me, standing there with a plate of ribs and 10 years of distance no one knew how to cross. My cousin Kyle saw it first, the quiet. The short hair, the scars, the 1,000-yard stare I didn't realize I still carried. He smirked. Look who finally showed up. Mr. Mystery. The laughter that followed wasn't cruel, just careless. But it landed heavy. No one knew where I'd been. I'd never told them. I'd left home right after high school, disappeared into a world where silence wasn't awkward, it was survival. Now, standing in that backyard surrounded by laughter, it felt like I'd stepped into a life that had gone on without me. Uncle Ray flipped burgers near the grill, his voice the same steady thunder it had always been. Good to see you, Noah. Been a while. Yeah, I said, forcing a smile. Guess I forgot how hot Carolina summers get. Hard to forget, he said, chuckling. Kyle here thinks he's the grill master now. Kyle grinned, loud enough for everyone to hear. Some of us actually stayed around Uncle Ray. The words stung, but I let them hang. There's no arguing with someone who needs to win a small battle. Inside, Aunt Linda was setting the table, humming gospel under her breath. Kids ran through the yard with sparklers, their laughter trailing like fireflies. It should have felt like home. But when you've seen enough of the world, home becomes a memory you study from afar. Kyle wasn't done. So, Noah, he said later, beer in hand. Where have you been hiding all these years? Jail? Witness protection? A few people laughed again, uncertain, testing. I smiled politely. Just traveling. Traveling, he said. What, like backpacking or something? Something like that. Uncle Ray looked at me then, really looked. His eyes lingered on the tattoo on my forearm, the faded patch stitched to my jacket pocket, the way I stood a little too still when fireworks cracked in the distance. His expression softened. He didn't say anything, but I saw understanding flicker there. Later, when the night deepened and the chatter softened into music and murmurs, Kyle started up again, louder this time. Hey, mystery man. You still too good to tell your own family what you actually do? The words cut through the hum of the party. People turned. Even the music seemed to hush. I set my drink down. My voice was calm. It's not about being too good, Kyle. Some stories don't belong at barbecues. He scoffed. Come on, man, we're family. Unless it's one of those secret agent fairy tales. Uncle Ray's hand landed gently on his son's shoulder. Kyle, he said quietly, but his tone carried weight. That's enough. Kyle frowned. I was just enough. The yard went silent. The air was thick with unspoken questions. Uncle Ray turned to me. You don't owe anyone an explanation, son. And in that moment, the old Marine stood a little taller. I realized he'd recognized the patch, the call sign I'd once carried. He reached for my hand, his grip firm, respectful. Welcome home, brother. The words hung there, heavy and sacred, and for the first time all evening, the noise around us felt right, not laughter at someone's expense, but the quiet acknowledgement between two men who'd seen the same storms. Kyle looked confused, guilt flickering across his face, but said nothing. The music started again. And though I smiled, part of me knew the night wasn't done testing what family really meant. The night carried on like the smoke from the grill, slow, thick, impossible to ignore. Everyone tried to move past the awkward silence, but something in the air had changed. Kyle stood off by the fence, pretending to laugh with his friends, but every few minutes, his eyes flicked toward me. I could feel it, the sting of pride, the bruise of embarrassment. Uncle Ray stayed near the grill, quieter now. Every so often, our eyes met, and I saw the same look I'd seen 100 times overseas, recognition without words. The kind of understanding that didn't need explanation. I slipped inside to get another drink. The kitchen was empty except for Aunt Linda, who was wiping down the counter, humming the same tune she had earlier. She glanced up, smiled softly. Ray told me you've been away a long time. Yeah, I said, pulling a soda from the cooler. Guess you could say that. Wherever you were, she said gently, I hope it brought you home safe. I paused, unsure how to respond. Something like that. From outside came the sound of laughter again, Kyle's voice, louder now, forced. I walked back toward the porch. A small group had gathered around him, half curious, half amused. He saw me and grinned. Hey, Noah. My dad's acting like you're some kind of superhero. You ever gonna tell us what makes you so special? I stayed calm. Nothing special, Kyle. He rolled his eyes. Right. And I'm guessing that patch on your jacket's just decoration. Uncle Ray turned sharply from the grill. Kyle. But Kyle was too far gone in his need to win. No, really, he said. If it's such a big secret, maybe I should just look it up. He pulled out his phone, squinting at the faded emblem on my sleeve. Let's see. Recon. Eagle. What is that, a biker club or something? The older guests had gone quiet. A few younger ones whispered. Then Ray's voice cut through the air, low but clear. Kyle. That emblem isn't a club. Kyle frowned, confused. Then what? Ray stepped forward. It's a unit insignia. One your grandfather would have recognized too. The silence deepened. Someone turned off the music. I didn't move. Didn't need to. Ray looked at me, then back at his son. You remember when I told you about my deployment, about the men who don't talk much when they come home? Kyle nodded slowly. Ray's tone softened. You're looking at one. Kyle blinked, the color draining from his face. Wait, Ray nodded once. Your cousin wore that patch for real. You don't ask a man like that to explain himself. You just shake his hand. The words settled like dust after a storm. For a moment, no one spoke. The only sound was the low hiss of the grill, forgotten but still burning. Kyle's eyes dropped. The pride that had carried him through the teasing vanished, replaced by something raw and uncertain. He walked toward me, slow, hesitant. I didn't know, he said quietly. I nodded. You weren't supposed to. I was just trying to make people laugh, I finished. I get it. Uncle Ray exhaled, long and heavy. Son, sometimes the loudest thing a man can do is stay quiet. Remember that. Kyle nodded, eyes glassy. Yes, sir. Aunt Linda stepped out onto the porch, her voice soft but steady. Dinner's getting cold. And just like that, the spell broke. People started moving again, quietly, carefully. Later that night, when most had gone home, Kyle found me sitting by the truck, staring at the dark field beyond the house. He stood there for a long moment before speaking. You ever think about what it's like for people who don't know? He asked. What do you mean? People like me, he said. We joke because we don't understand. But sometimes I think we don't want to. I looked up at him. Understanding takes effort. Most folks stop at comfort. He nodded. I guess I did too. The moonlight caught the edge of his face, humbled, young, still learning. Then he said quietly, for what it's worth, I'm sorry, Noah. I didn't say much. Just patted his shoulder once. Don't be sorry, kid, I said. Just listen next time someone's quiet. He nodded, swallowed hard, and walked back toward the house. And as I watched him go, I realized that maybe this night wasn't about me at all. Maybe it was about what silence could still teach, even when the war was long over. Morning came soft and blue, the kind of light that makes even yesterday's noise feel far away. I woke to the sound of birds and someone moving around the porch. When I stepped outside, Kyle was sitting there with 2 mugs of coffee. He didn't look up right away. Figured you'd be up early, he said. Old habits, I replied. He slid one of the mugs toward me. Cream and sugar. Aunt Linda says you used to drink it that way. We sat there quietly, watching mist roll across the field. The silence wasn't heavy anymore. It was calm, like the air after rain. Kyle cleared his throat. Dad talked a lot last night. About service. About what it does to people. I nodded. He said you don't talk much about it, but that you probably saw things most of us couldn't imagine. I took a sip of coffee. That's about right. He looked down at his hands. When I made that joke yesterday, I didn't mean to disrespect what you did. I just thought I know what you thought, I said gently. You were trying to make everyone laugh. You wanted the attention. He winced but nodded. The truth is, I continued, I used to do the same thing. Before I left. Yeah, I said. I used to think being loud made you seen. But sometimes, it just makes it harder for other people to breathe. Kyle's shoulders loosened a little. Dad said you saved people. That true. I looked out toward the trees, the sunlight catching on the dew. Everyone saves someone in their own way. Some people just don't realize it. For a while we said nothing. The hum of the early day filled the silence. Sprinklers, a lawnmower somewhere far off, the steady rhythm of life going on. Inside, Aunt Linda was making pancakes. She smiled when she saw us through the window. When Uncle Ray joined us, he gave his son a nod. You two made peace? Kyle nodded. Working on it. Ray clapped him on the shoulder. Good. Real men don't let pride talk louder than heart. After breakfast, I walked into town. The air smelled of honeysuckle and smoke from someone's fireplace. Main Street looked the same as it had years ago, the same diner, the same barbershop, the same crooked mailbox. But people looked at me differently now. Not because of the patch or the story, but because Uncle Ray had told them something important without telling them everything. Respect doesn't need details. At the diner, old Mr. Greeley waved me over. Heard you're Ray's nephew, he said. Welcome back, son. I smiled. Thanks. Feels good to be here again. Ray says you worked overseas. Bet you've got stories. Some, I said. But I'd rather hear yours. He laughed, and that was enough. That afternoon, Carl showed up at the garage where Ray kept his old truck. Dad says you know engines, he said. Some, I answered. He grinned. Maybe you can teach me. I could use something real to work on. So we did side by side, sleeves rolled, hands black with oil. We didn't talk much, but the work filled the space between us. As the sun set, Carl wiped his hands and said, You think people can change that fast? I shrugged. Change isn't fast. It's quiet. You don't notice it until it's done. He nodded, thoughtful. Then he looked at me. Dad said maybe we should invite you over more often. Said you've got a lot to teach me. I smiled. Sounds like your dad's got plans. Yeah, Kyle said. He usually does. That evening, when the light turned amber and the cicadas started up, I stood on the porch again. The field glowed gold, the air humming with the sound of a world at peace. For the first time since coming home, I felt something loosen inside, the sense that maybe I didn't have to keep every memory locked away. Maybe being here with them was its own kind of healing. I didn't know what tomorrow would bring. But for now, the quiet felt right. And somewhere in that stillness, I heard Ray's voice from inside the house. Dinner's on, boys. Come eat before it gets cold. Kyle laughed, the easy kind of laugh that no longer cut deep. And I realized that sometimes forgiveness doesn't arrive with grand speeches or salutes. Sometimes it's just breakfast, grease, and the sound of someone finally calling you family again. The week passed slowly, the way small-town weeks do when summer starts to fade. Every morning I'd find myself at the garage with Uncle Ray and Kyle, turning wrenches, trading half-finished jokes. The air smelled of gasoline and cut grass. Each evening, the sky burned gold over the fields. Little by little, people stopped whispering when I walked into a store. They'd nod instead, sometimes smile. Respect doesn't make noise. It just settles in like dust on sunlight. One afternoon, while Kyle hunted for a socket wrench, Ray leaned against the truck and said, You look lighter, son. Guess a few quiet mornings do that. Guess so, I said. He studied me for a moment. You ever talk to anyone about it? I knew what he meant. Not really. Most folks wouldn't understand. He nodded. You'd be surprised what folks understand when you let them. That night there was a town charity drive at the community hall. Kyle convinced me to come. You can't just live in the garage forever, he said. I laughed. One step at a time. The hall buzzed with chatter, guitars, the smell of barbecue. I hadn't been in a crowd like that since before I'd left. The sound pressed close, the way it used to when the world still felt simple. A little girl selling raffle tickets stopped in front of me. You want to buy one, mister? She asked. I smiled. Sure. She tore a ticket, dropped it in her jar, and said, My daddy says you used to be a soldier. Thank you. The words hit me harder than I expected. You tell your daddy I said thank you too, I said softly. When I looked up, half the room was watching. Not with curiosity, with quiet kindness. It was strange being seen without being questioned. Later, outside under the string lights, Ray joined me. She's right, you know, he said. About what? About thanks. I shook my head. I didn't do it for that. He nodded. Nobody does. But sometimes hearing it reminds you you're still part of the world you fought for. We stood there a while, watching people dance. Then Kyle walked up, holding 2 sodas. You okay? He asked. Yeah, I said. Just getting used to noise again. He grinned. Noise isn't always bad. As the night wound down, someone handed me a microphone for the raffle drawing. My first instinct was to refuse, but Ray's hand rested on my shoulder. Go on, he said quietly. They just want to hear you. I stepped to the mic. The hall hushed. My voice felt rusty, but steady. Hey, I don't really do speeches, I started. A few people laughed gently. But I just want to say thanks. For the food, the company, and for reminding a guy like me what home sounds like. Applause rose, soft but genuine. I smiled, handed back the mic, and slipped outside into the cooler air. Kyle followed. You really hate talking, don't you? Not hate, I said. Just learning when it matters. He nodded, then hesitated. When you left that first time, were you scared? Yeah, I said. Every day. So why'd you go? I looked at him. Because some things are worth being scared for. He was quiet for a long time, the kind of quiet that means a lesson has landed. Back at the house later, Aunt Linda handed me a folded envelope. Came in the mail for you, honey. No return address. Inside was a single line written in careful handwriting. You can come home now. I stared at it for a long time. No signature. No explanation. But somehow I knew what it meant. Maybe not a letter from someone else, maybe a message to myself I'd finally be ready to believe. That night, I sat on the porch again. The moon rose high, pale and steady, and the sound of laughter drifted from the open windows. For the first time in years, it didn't make me flinch. It just felt like life, messy, loud, forgiving. The next morning was cool and gray, the kind of sky that makes coffee taste stronger. Kyle was already in the garage, elbow deep in the truck engine, grease on his hands and determination on his face. Morning, I said. He looked up, smiling. Guess I beat you for once. Don't get used to it. We worked in easy rhythm, the kind of quiet teamwork that doesn't need words. The hum of tools, the click of metal, each sound felt like part of a language we'd finally learned to share. Halfway through tightening a bolt, Kyle asked, You ever miss it? Being out there. I hesitated. Some days. But not for the reasons people think. He waited, respectful, giving me space. I miss the people, I said finally. The way they'd have your back without asking why. The noise, the routine, the purpose. Out there, everything meant something. Here, I looked around at the small town horizon. It's harder to tell. He nodded slowly. Dad says you lost someone. I tightened the wrench once more before answering. More than one. We worked quietly again until Kyle set the wrench down. You don't have to talk about it if it hurts. It always hurts, I said. But pretending it doesn't just makes it worse. That night, after dinner, Ray asked me to join him outside. The sky was bruised purple, stars just beginning to show. He handed me a small tin box. Your aunt found this in the attic. Thought it might be yours. Inside were old photos, me and a few of the guys from the unit, smiling in sand and dust, our arms slung around each other. One photo stopped me cold. Jake, grinning wide, his helmet tilted back, sunlight in his eyes. I hadn't spoken his name in years. Ray's voice was low. He close. Closer than a brother. What happened? I swallowed. Ambush. Wrong road, wrong time. I was the one who told him it was clear. Ray rested a hand on my shoulder, the weight of it steady, grounding. You came back. You honor him by living, not by hurting. Later, I sat on the porch steps, the photo of Jake in my hands. The porch light flickered, the crickets sang. Kyle appeared in the doorway. You okay? Yeah, I said softly. Just remembering. He sat beside me. Dad told me once that memories don't fade, they just change color. I smiled faintly. Smart man. He nodded. He said pain's the same way. We sat there in silence, 2 generations staring out at the same dark field. Then Kyle said quietly, when I first saw you at the barbecue, I thought you were angry. But now I think maybe you were just tired. You're not wrong, I said. Takes a while to learn how to be home again. He leaned back on his elbows. You think you're there yet? I looked out at the distant porch lights, the faint laughter from inside. Closer than I've ever been. A breeze moved through the trees, carrying the smell of summer and something like peace. In that moment, I realized how much healing happens without anyone noticing, just small moments strung together until the world feels steady again. When I finally stood, I handed Kyle the photo of Jake. Keep it, I said. Remind yourself that every joke, every word, it lands somewhere. Make sure it lands soft. He nodded, tucking the photo carefully into his pocket. Inside, Aunt Linda called, "Dessert's ready." Kyle grinned. She made peach cobbler. Then we better hurry. As we walked in, the warm light spilled across the porch, golden and forgiving. For the first time in a long while, I felt the quiet inside me shift, not vanish, but soften, like a scar fading into skin. And I knew then that coming home wasn't about where you'd been. It was about who finally saw you when you stopped hiding. By the time August rolled around, the town had settled into its slow heartbeat again. The fairgrounds buzzed with families, the air heavy with the smell of popcorn and rain. For the first time since I'd come home, I didn't feel like an outsider watching it all happen. I was part of it. It started small. Kyle asked if I'd help out at the local youth center's workshop. They're trying to fix up those old go-karts, he said. They could use someone who actually knows what they're doing. I laughed. Guess that's me then. The first afternoon there, a handful of kids hovered around the broken frames. I showed them how to check spark plugs, how to listen to an engine instead of fighting it. Most of them didn't talk much at first, but once they realized I wasn't going to bark orders, they relaxed. One boy, maybe 13, asked, "You were in the service, right?" I nodded. Yeah. Was it scary? Sometimes, I said. But you learn to do hard things even when you're scared. That's how you grow. He thought about that for a long moment, then smiled. My dad's been gone a lot. He says he's just working. I looked at the half-built cart. Then you make something he'll want to come home to. When the engines finally roared to life, the sound filled the garage, raw and triumphant. The kids cheered. For the first time in a long while, I felt that sound deep in my chest, not the echo of war, but the rhythm of life coming back. That evening, back at the house, Aunt Linda met me at the door. "You smell like oil and sunshine," she said with a grin. "You must have had a good day." I smiled. "You could say that. Dinner's almost ready. Ray says he's proud of you." In the backyard, Uncle Ray was sitting with his usual mug of coffee, the porch light catching the lines in his face. He looked up as I joined him. "Heard you're a teacher now," he said. "Just helping out. That's how it starts." He took a slow sip. "You know, Noah, I think maybe you came back to remind us what study looks like." I laughed softly. "I'm still learning that myself." "Learning's enough," he said. "Most folks stop trying." Later that week, the town paper ran a small story about the workshop. It wasn't much, just a picture of me and the kids beside the carts, grease on our hands, smiles wide. Underneath, the headline read, "Local vet helps youth build more than engines." I didn't think anyone would notice. But at the diner the next morning, people stopped by to shake my hand. Not for what I'd done years ago, but for what I was doing now. Even Kyle teased me. "Look at you, small-town celebrity." I smiled. "Guess we all grow up eventually." He grinned. "Some of us faster than others." As summer stretched toward its end, I realized something simple but profound. The world doesn't give you peace. You build it, one act at a time. Every time I showed a kid how to fix a spark plug or laughed with Kyle over a shared mistake, another piece of the past lost its sharp edge. One night, after locking up the youth center, I walked down to the river. The water caught the last of the sunset, gold and silver mixed. I thought of Jake again, of all the faces I'd left behind, and whispered, "We're okay now." The wind moved across the water like an answer. When I got home, Ray was still awake, waiting with 2 cups of coffee. He handed one to me and said, "You've found your rhythm again, haven't you?" "Maybe," I said. "Still feels strange sometimes." "That's the point," he said. "If it felt easy, it wouldn't mean as much." I smiled. He was right. The night stretched quiet and wide around us. Somewhere inside the house, Aunt Linda was humming again, the same old gospel tune she always sang when things felt right. And for the first time since coming home, I realized I wasn't surviving anymore. I was living. By September, the heat had lifted. The sky was a deeper kind of blue, the kind that makes you think of second chances. Leaves began to curl gold along the edges of the yard, and the air smelled faintly of wood smoke. The season had turned, and so had we. The youth center hosted a little celebration for the end of summer. Parents brought casseroles and pies. Kids raced their rebuilt go-karts around the lot, laughter spilling into the twilight. I stood near the fence, watching them, a cup of lemonade in hand. Kyle was helping one of the younger boys steer, his patience steady, his grin proud. When the race ended, the kids crowded around, shouting, "We did it." "You sure did," I said. And no one even crashed. "That's a win." They laughed, a bright, unfiltered sound that made something warm bloom in my chest. A woman I didn't know came up and said, "You must be Noah. My son can't stop talking about this place. Thank you for what you're doing." I smiled. He did most of it himself. I just handed him the right wrench. She nodded. Sometimes that's all people need. Later, as the sun dipped low, Uncle Ray walked over, hands in his jacket pockets. "You look content," he said. "Feels different this time," I answered. "Like I finally stopped running." He nodded. "That's the thing about coming home. It's not a place, it's a moment." The last of the kids left, the lights dimmed, and the world got quiet again. I locked the door, turned to find Kyle waiting by the truck. "Dad says you're heading out tomorrow," he said. "Just for a few days," I said. "Some meetings, maybe a new project." "Not leaving." He nodded, then hesitated. "You know, I used to think heroes were the loud ones. The ones who bragged. And now?" He smiled. "Now I think maybe they're the ones who just keep showing up." I chuckled. "You're growing up, kid." "Trying," he said. We drove home in easy silence, the headlights cutting through the dark like calm breathing. That night, the family gathered on the porch one last time before the weather turned cold. Aunt Linda served pie, Ray poured coffee. Kyle sat cross-legged on the steps, fiddling with the photo of Jake I'd given him weeks ago. He looked up suddenly. "You ever think Jake would have liked it here?" I smiled, looking out across the open field. "Yeah, I think he would have." The crickets hummed, the stars came out. It was one of those nights that felt like a photograph, simple, still, infinite. After a while, Ray spoke, voice soft. "You ever think about writing it down? The stories, the lessons. Folks could learn from it." "Maybe," I said. "But for now, I think I'd rather live them." He nodded, satisfied. "That's enough." We sat in silence until the porch light flickered and the night grew thick. Aunt Linda yawned. "Bedtime, gentlemen." She kissed Ray's cheek, patted my shoulder, and disappeared inside. When it was just me and Ray, he said quietly, "You found peace, Noah. You did good." I looked at him. "I didn't do it alone." He smiled. "No one ever does." I stayed there long after they'd gone to bed, the night wrapped around me like an old, forgiving blanket. For the first time, the silence didn't remind me of loss. It reminded me of love, steady, patient, unspoken. I reached into my pocket, pulled out the note I'd kept all this time. "You can come home now." I unfolded it one last time, smiled, and tucked it into the porch rail for the wind to carry. The breeze lifted it gently, almost playfully, before the paper disappeared into the dark. I whispered, "I'm home." And that was it. No grand ending, no salute or ceremony. Just the sound of the world turning quietly toward morning, and the peace that comes when a man finally forgives himself for surviving.